Now, welcome to yet another episode of the Online Prosperity Show, the place where we unpack real stories from the real people who are building meaningful, profitable impact in the world. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga. And if you've ever felt frustrated, maybe by broken education systems, outdated learning tools, or maybe just wondered how technology can actually work in real classrooms and not just in theory, then today's episode is for you, because this is the show where we're going to be looking at exclusive insights of how innovations are actually solving real world problems using practical human first solutions. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe on whatever platform that you're watching or listening this on, because this is where transformation lives. Now, today we're joined by someone who lives at the intersection of education, technology, and reality. Now, Blessing, how are you doing, my brother?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Prosper?
Fantastic. I was just checking where in the world is this guy right now? Because the last time I checked, you were in China, right?
Yes, I was. I was. And I'll be there again promptly, for sure.
Absolutely. So we actually need a GPS tracker on you now, just so we know whereabouts in the world is a Blessing. Now, for those that are meeting Blessing for the very first time, he is the founder of ZivoLabs. And Blessing, by nature, is an educator, software engineer, and the kind of person who asks, I think, dangerous questions like, hey, what would happen if Wi-Fi dies and the power cuts out? And, but the lessons gotta go on. In our language we say, hey, it's gotta keep going. So it's things like that and questions like that that he is here to answer, because he's building hands-on STEM kits and digital tools for Zimbabwean schools, not the Silicon Valley fantasy products that are out there, but technology that actually works and survives in the real classroom. And here's a fun fact about Blessing. I mean, he believes the best technology is the one that still works when the power goes off. Can you imagine when you're trying to watch your favorite TV game or TV or soccer game and the power goes off and there goes all the penalties and everything else that comes along with it? And that could also happen in a classroom scenario where the lesson is going and everything is going, and that Zimbabwe electricity sometimes available, which is ZESA, decides to do what it does. All right. So this is not just a tech slogan. It's an actual survival philosophy. So in this episode, we're going to be looking at practical innovation, not hype, not buzzwords, but how to build solutions that actually work in a messy, underfunded, unpredictable environments and still create real impact. So Blessing, I could go on and talk about things that I'm not even qualified to even start talking about. Tell us a little bit about your journey, man. I mean, you're a software engineer, you're in IT, you're in education. Who is Blessing, and why should we start paying attention?
All right. So first of all, thank you for giving me this opportunity. It's very much appreciated. So to begin, I grew up in Zimbabwe, of course. Went through the Zimbabwean education system. I think for the most part, it did its best to educate me and other citizens. And here we are. So from around the age of 18, when I finished my A levels, I moved to China, which was quite eye-opening, to be fair. Everything was bigger, grander, more techy, right? And I did my bachelor's there, software engineering. And the thing that I fell in love with the most was how the difference between the classrooms in Zimbabwe and the classrooms in China, and just seeing how education was being given to the students. And it really inspired me to go down that route. And since I was a trained software engineer, I started off teaching IT at a training center, basic coding skills, things of that nature. And later on, we jump a few years. Um, I got this idea of how about we bring some of these tools and these experiences back home where I'm from and see how it works and how people can benefit from them. But of course, there was this problem that the resources that system in China provides and the resources that the Zimbabwean system provides were night and day. Right. So trying to deliver the same level of education, of course, there will be holes in that. It'll be practically impossible. So basically the question arose, do we not teach or do we not learn about, the modern day technology, or should we find other ways? And that was the birth of ZivoLabs.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for taking us on that journey. Now, obviously, before your passport was stamped, and maybe before you even had one, you probably had a birth certificate, if I'm not mistaken. Tell us a little bit about that sort of journey, as a little boy. What was it like, so we can have the actual contrast of, your upbringing and then what you then later on went to experience?
So I was born in Harare, grew up in Warren Park. I have roots in Glenora. Both of my parents are from Glenora. So a big shout out to Glenora, of course. My grandparents are there as well. Growing up, typical Zimbabwean life on the south of Samora, you know how it is. Everyone was an engineer. That's one thing I would like to point out. We used to make wire cars. We used to play with what we had, bricks, bottle openers, cans, whatever was at our disposal. We figured out ways of making it a toy or a tool for something. So that was the upbringing, that I had and most Zimbabwean kids had. And that remained the sort of the backbone of what we do now. And sometimes when I look at, when I watch kids, I'm a father now, my older brother is a father as well. And we look at our kids, it's almost very different from how we grew up. We had almost a natural inclination towards engineering. We didn't know it was engineering at that time, right? We thought we were just making a wire car, but we figured out how to make the wheels turn in a certain way. I remember we were making these cars where we used a rubber band, and if you turn it to the right, it goes to the left, and all of that was just kids being kids. And as we grew up, that those skills became almost useless, right? And they shouldn't be, because that is something that's very important. So that was my growing up, and that is what inspired me to get to this point and ask the questions that I started asking. This, where did that go? Where did that inclination towards making things? Where did that go? How did it not translate in adulthood to solving problems around the house, and within the community? So that is how my upbringing, got me where I am now.
Absolutely. While you were speaking, I was having all these nostalgic moments. I remember I made a car that had like a Cobra tin at the top, and
Oh, yes.
what that Cobra tin would do is you put a plastic bag around it and wrap around with elastic. Then it creates a sound, like a sound effect of the car. If it's moving, the car goes, based on.
I see. You see, that's impressive. That's very impressive. Right.
And we would make kites and all that stuff. And yeah, and we don't know. Do kids still do that these days, or has the cheaper tools just rocked up and the iPhone and the iPad has taken away all that innovation?
Yeah, the iPads are here, and it's a cause for concern. To be fair, kids are now more consumers of technology that rather than, participants in making it. So kids would prefer to just sit back, be entertained, watch whatever they are watching on their iPad, click a few buttons, things happen, and just sit back. There's no ingenuity. There are no questions being asked. They can't even fix the iPad if anything simple goes wrong, right? We used to open things and see what's inside, and you were on the timer as well because your parents would come back and they had to see everything in perfect condition. So once you take something apart, you had to put it back. So I don't think I don't think they still do that, but kids are always kids. They still have that desire to learn. So the learning is there. The want to learn is there, only that the tools given to them have changed.
I can only imagine. Well, I haven't been around those areas for quite a while, but every time I try to incite my little girls to fix something, I mean, the little that they can do is just make funny things like this. And I'm like, at least you tried, All right. So you then obviously grew up in that sort of environment where everything had to be hands-on, and obviously school would have been what it was. You finish your A levels, and then there you are in China. What was the biggest culture shock besides the language that you experienced, and why China?
So, first, why China? I didn't really had any knowledge about China at that time. I actually wanted to go to the UK for my bachelor's degree for my university, but that didn't work out. So I ended up going to China. I was just open to seeing whatever I'll see there. I didn't try to do too much research on China and where they were. I just went, curious, ready to learn, willing to learn. One of the biggest culture shocks besides the language was, of course, food. The Chinese eat a very wide variety of food, so that was one that was pretty shocking. But also, what I saw in terms of education was the dedication to education was just unparalleled. It was something I had never seen. Students go to school from 8 in the morning to 4 p.m. They leave school. They go to training centers. They learn English, math. They take lessons almost on a daily basis. They go back home. Parents are, watching them. Did you complete your homework? Did you do this? And comparing that to what I was doing at that time, I remember in primary school, I went to a public primary school in Warren Park. So we had hot sitting, right? You had kids start school from 8 to 12, and then another group from 12:30 to 4, right? So if I went to school from 8 to 12, the rest of the day, I'm just going with the wind. Really, I'm out there in the streets playing with my friends. But that was different from how it is done until now in China. They take their time. Kids have a lot on their plate. So that was very, very shocking. That dedication they have to education is unparalleled, really.
I mean, obviously, we just talked about innovation and how we were creating, and because there was a lot of time for that. And in other, cultures, they wouldn't have had that because most of their time is caught up in all of these curriculum activities and things like that. And for those that are watching right now, hot sitting is basically using the same class and you swapping the students, coming in at staggered times just so that they can accommodate as many students as possible with very few classrooms available. So they couldn't take all the kids all at the same time. I was actually surprised. My kids, there's like 15 of them in the class, and I'm like, 15? That's it's just people that use one toilet. What are you talking about?
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. So now that you've got, all these worlds, at what point did you realize that maybe the system you grew up in was somewhat broken in the way that it was delivering, education to the students?
Looking at the Zimbabwean education system, we have to look at it with the constraints that it has, right? This is a third world country, so we do not expect, flat screen TVs and all types of equipment in classrooms. So we have to look at it from that lens. However, I think one of the things that is commendable about education in Zimbabwe is that it is pretty much a group thing, right? Parents are involved. You have, especially nowadays, you have parent groups that help out students, especially in rural areas and things like that. So for the most part, I never really looked down on Zimbabwean education, even though I was in China witnessing something that seemed extraordinary. What I still commended the Zimbabwean education system and what they managed to do with what they had. So I never looked at it as broken to be exact, but just good enough within those constraints, I would say.
And I concur with that. I mean, every other Zimbabwean person that I've sort of met who's outside, they're either really doing amazing or they're about to do amazing. You know what I mean? It's never like, there's always, something going on. And and I maybe just, pay homage to the education system. Even like you say right now, you do say humbly, you would have been educated in a public school, but the way you speak and the eloquence you've got and just the person you are is, kudos to the education system, that would have brought you where you're at. But I mean, obviously you had an opportunity to start creating, for bigger markets and start doing bigger things. Why Zimbabwe specifically? I mean, most tech founders will be told chase bigger markets, chase richer markets. Like you said, if you're going to create something that involves a screen, whereas the recipient or the people that you're doing it for might not even have a screen per se. You know what I mean? What's your rationale in that?
So my focus on Zimbabwe, actually, I always wanted to do something back home, like any immigrant that moves, to another country. You always still think of back home and think of what can be done to improve the circumstances and living conditions and systems back home. But when you move from a third world country to relatively a first world country, you start to see a lot of things there, a lot of innovation that are not back home. And you start to think, how can we implement this back home? Why hasn't somebody created an Uber back home? Why hasn't somebody created an Amazon back home, right? So we all have those ideas, at the back of our heads, but we are so focused on what we have in front of us, working, trying to earn a living and so forth. But luckily for me, I was already in that industry and I was already serving that market and I was already, administering that education and technology to kids in China. So I thought this could be very helpful back home and they would really make use of it. Now, as far as the market is concerned, I think it's perfect. People would say, why back home? I would say, why not back home, right? Africa is the only growing economies, most growing economies are back home, right? You want to get in it early. You want to be one of the first to do something. You cannot make an Uber for America at this point, right? You cannot make an Uber for Europe at this point. The only place left is back home because there's still so many steps to be taken. So Zimbabwe was an automatic option for me. It had to be.
But weren't you scared though? I mean, you already set yourself up. You were talking about all these jobs that you're already doing, stable environment, stable economy, and you would have left all of that just to build something uncertain.
Well, it is uncertain everywhere. It's never certain wherever you are, because before this, actually, I went on another journey in China. We created something that we called the play place, right? So this was almost the precursor to ZivoLabs. So the play place didn't materialize, but of course, in every failed endeavor, there are lessons to be learned. So the idea was very simple. It was we were creating these third places, communities coming together with local businesses, and creating places where people can go, third places. Usually people have a place they work, a place they live. And we needed these third places where people can have a good time, sit back, enjoy, kids, parents, families. It could be restaurants, coffee shops, playgrounds, you name it, anything. And one of the reasons why that didn't work out very well is because, of course, the competition is very, very high in developed countries. But also, as an outsider trying to tap into a market, there is a lot of holes and a lot of blind corners that you do not see, right? So that taught us a few things that we later on took and put into ZivoLabs, and we decided this is the perfect way to go about it, because I'm from Zimbabwe. We know Zimbabwe very well. We've been through the system, even though we don't live there 24/7 or as our primary residency, but we still grew up within that system, and we have enough knowledge about the problems there for us to even start thinking about solutions. So, yeah.
No, don't you worry, man. You might be out of Zimbabwe, but your WhatsApp is still connected, and yeah, you're still anchored. So
Yes.
that's one thing. But what's the one assumption about ed tech that completely collapsed for you once you started, working on ZivoLabs and what you're working on right now?
It's a good question. I would say the way we look at ed tech, we look at it as sort of bringing technology into not only into the classroom, but into the students' lives, right? Into the kids' life, into the learners' life. We're trying to bring technology to them and have them use technology in different ways. But what I quickly realized was that most students already have technology, whether back home or just in their life in general, right? Like we were talking about iPads. So it's not really anything new. And also what I realized was that most technology that we bring into the classroom is not really helpful in that sense, right? It's we have iPads in the classroom. That's great. But what are we really doing with these iPads and these softwares that are, on the iPads, these browsers that they're using? It's so much going on. It creates clutter. I've worked in this industry for a long time. To some point, I like to keep things on the minimum, right? We have one simple software we use. That's pretty much it. But most of the times we think the more tech we put into the classroom, the better. I think otherwise, the less we rely on the internet, the less we rely on just electricity from the electric grid, right? The better, right? Let's keep things more, I would say, mechanical, much better than to go too far digital. Because I think you would remember when we were growing up, we had certain electives in high school, classes like metal work, classes like agriculture, building, we called it.
Woodwork, yeah.
Woodwork, carpentry, things that were more on the mechanical side of things, right? That's technology in itself. students are learning how to put things together, right? So we're now living in a digital world. Yes, I know, and you can't hide from that. But what can we really teach about the digital world that is necessary for, let's say, fifth graders, right? That they don't already know, or because some of the students that I teach, they they are up to date with everything that is going on, right? They already use ChatGPT, they already use AI, they are in touch with everything. So are we going to have a topic or a class on teaching them how to navigate through a computer? Like it was different for us. When computers came out, we were in school. We actually had to learn, typing, for example. Kids nowadays, they already have iPads from 5 years old. You can't teach them. They will teach you how to, play around with modern technology. So that is one thing that I've noticed being in ed tech, is that a lot of tech does not always improve things, does not always make the education experience better.
While you were talking, I was actually thinking I grew up around the time where you're right, Mavis Beacon, ASDF, you had to learn to write. And literally, I wrote on my hands ASDF, and it made it look like I had tattoos on here, like how people have tattoos on their hands and things like that. So I must have been a computer gangster. But also, the iPhone, or the phone that we have these days, apparently it's got more technology packed inside of it than the rocket ship that actually landed on the moon, if you would want to believe that. So, and yet we're sitting here watching fights and, laughing at each other, and you can imagine. And I see what you're talking about, where small technologies actually made a bigger difference, yet we now have all this tech and we're not doing anything with it. When we started talking about pieces of wire put together in such a way that it was repurposing, it was, we were recycling stuff. Even we would put paper together and make a football out of that. I don't know if you had that opportunity as well as a kid, you know what I mean? So, yeah. And that
I was a pro at
that would take us the whole day, and
yes,
and that was a pastime. So I think you're right. So when did you then shift from, as an IT person, I should be building impressive systems, to I think we should start building useful systems? Is there something that would have actually triggered that mindset change? Because impressive systems get the funding, but useful tools, you really need to sell those.
Yes, so I think it's all about the stages, right? With IT and tech, useful systems, of course, we need those. They are the backbone of everything that we do in the classroom, right? Any school has an IT department. I had the pleasure of working in an IT department at a school. It is a lot going on, servers, all of that, etc. But when it comes to the classroom itself, inside the classroom and the learning process, right, we want students to be equipped with knowledge that they can take back home. So in most cases, when we learn something, right, we usually use these tools that students take back home with them, right, and they show their parents something that is tangible. And the parents are usually excited about this, right? So they love it. So even though it is not the most high tech and high end technology, it is something that a student can explain from start to finish, right? And it's always miniature versions of what is on the bigger scale, right? So what we would want to cultivate in students is not only understanding, it's not focusing so much on the high end technologies that are out there, but solving problems is the cornerstone excuse me, of what we do, right? We're not trying to be familiar with high-end technology. We're trying to have students be familiar with problems around them, right? So that is the main thing. We have this problem. How can we solve it, right? Forget about servers, forget about anything you think you know. We have a problem. How can it be solved, right? What tools would we need? That is where we start. And then from there, we can take it as far as the high end technology if it is at our disposal. But if we miss that point, we end up creating AI powered softwares and applications that really solve nothing, right? Because we are not familiar with the problems. So if we have students in the classroom, we want them to talk about the difficulties that they face on a daily basis, the things that they see in their homes. And we think, okay, how can we start thinking about solving those, thinking as engineers, problem solvers? And that is where it starts. And then it ends up at the other end.
You know, you're talking about Warren Park, right? I had a uncle who lived around those areas. Yeah, Warren Park and all those areas. I've forgotten the suburb. And he bought a 3 CD changer, and I think I was in grade 7 during the grade 7 holidays. All right, so you can only imagine. And we had one CD, the Leonard Dembo, Leonard Jakarta CD, or one of those Leonards. All right, and we sat together on a weekend, and I was standing in front of the radio, and he had the manual sitting at the sofa there. And then he was like, yeah, press this button, let's see what this does. So we were actually learning the tool as we progressed. And that was a bonding moment, me and my uncle there, and that was also a moment of we've discovered something that we never knew. Whereas these days, everything is just plug and play. And I feel like that has been taken away from us. I mean, well, what's your comment to that? Because that's where the learning and whole thing comes into play. I don't know. I just thought about that when you were saying, most of these things have just been made super simple and super easy, yet, it takes away the actual learning aspect, of the whole concept.
Yes, I think you're absolutely correct. It leads us to being consumers of technology rather than participants in the creation of those technologies, right? So if you look at Zimbabwe and Africa at large, we are already consumer economies. We consume a lot. Most of us do not know how simple things are made, right? Matches that we use on a daily basis scratched on the box. We have no idea how that is done, but I'm pretty sure it's nothing complicated, right? It's not rocket science to create a match.
Just don't make it wet.
Yes, but we are not aware of how a lot of simple things are made because we are now in that mind state of just consuming things, right? So if you don't have a matchbox in the house, you fold your arms. You have no solutions, right? So that is the result of us just being consumers of technology. Everything is ready made, plug and play. You just use convenience, right? But there is that curiosity has been taken away from us to try to see how can this be done? How is this put together, right? And it also involves breaking things and then putting them back together. So I do agree with you that the consumption of technology, especially ready-made plug and play technology, is something that we have to keep away from our kids and our students for the most part.
Oh, absolutely. But what's been the most sort of rewarding moment for you so far? I mean, is there like a story from like either a teacher or a student that has had, contact with your ideas or with your technology that has actually made it real for you that makes you want to keep pursuing this?
So I would say two things. The first thing would be realizing that kids are still kids and they're still very inquisitive and curious, right? That's just their baseline. That's where they operate. Kids want to learn. So when you present something in front of them, and we have a tool, it's small little bits of pieces scattered all over, screws, motors, things like that. It's easy to grab students' attention. So you can see them put their iPads away and huddle up around the table and start touching things and asking questions and saying, what is this? Well, what does it do? And then you show them the final product and you say, okay, this is what we're trying to create. So these are the tools we have. Let's go at it. And they're very, very excited about that. So to still see that on a daily basis, it's amazing. It's something great, something that keeps me motivated, knowing that I'm not preaching to the choir. I'm not just talking to people that are not interested. Students are very much interested. The second thing, especially particularly with the Zimbabwean environment, is that the government has been pushing STEM really, really hard, especially in this new dispensation. The introduction of the heritage-based curriculum, the Ministry of ICT has been helping out quite a lot. And they have been pushing different initiatives that have to do with STEM, and the government actually taking that step to realize that our education system is not creating what we actually need has been really, really amazing to work under those conditions. So I would say those two things, they are some of the top reasons why we see a bright future where we're headed.
Now, while you're talking, I just checked the Forbes list. Your name is not on there. Mine is not there yet. Now, how do you measure success now? Is it growth? Is it revenue, or something else?
Oh, come again?
How are you measuring your success? How are you measuring your success? Is it growth, in terms of your team, business, or whatever it is, or is it revenue or something else?
I would say impact is the first thing that we're looking at, right? How many students can we actually reach? How far can we go, right? In Zimbabwe, for example, we have certain corners of the country that are not really tapped into, where it's a lot of students there. I was looking at some of the numbers. We have around 20% of students in rural areas actually pass M.E.D.I.A, right? Compared to about 40% in urban areas. And maybe half of them actually go to A level and take up STEM subjects. And maybe about 5% make it to college and take engineering courses and engineering pathways. So we have those corners of the country that are falling behind. And they don't necessarily have to, because coming back to the question you asked me about technology in the classroom, right? We are still under the assumption that for us to push STEM in, for example, rural areas, we need to electrify the village, get those electric lines going, wires, everything. We need to get the internet going, whether be it Starlink, Econet, talk to whoever you have to talk to. We need funding, probably millions of dollars to get everything going. But that is really not the case. We have one thing working in our favor, is that students are curious already. So we don't need nothing too fancy. Second thing, we are not students in rural areas in Zimbabwe. They are not trying to make the next Chat GPT or the next DeepSeek or whatever it is, right? They are trying to solve a water crisis, right? We don't necessarily need AI powered. We might use AI power for sure, but we are not trying to create it at this point. At this point, we're trying to use very simple tools that we have designed. We've designed our tools with that in mind, right? How can we introduce STEM and technology to a student who is living in a place where they have no TV in the house, they have no electricity and access to all of this, right? How can we show them that they can actually learn technology, use technology in their day-to-day lives, and that there's already technology around them, right? There's already a lot of engineering going on. So that is what we would measure success with, is that impact. How far can we go, and how many eyes can we open and see that, oh, this can be done without having to break the bank so to speak.
You know what you just said just reminded me of a very simple but useful play on technology without the use of a lot of it. I don't know if you have ever seen, or you would have been around, where the dynamo was used as a way to power the bicycle light. So you would put it at the back of the wheel, and then as the wheel rotates, it's turning some sort of a dynamo, which then powers an engine. And I'm just thinking to myself, can that not be redesigned in such a way that it can bypass, like you say, all this infrastructure, which then creates a bigger headache than needs be? You know what I mean? So maybe you can briefly let us know what it is that you've come up with and how it is actually, because obviously now you're designing for power cuts, budget limits, teacher overload, and infrastructure gaps. You know what I mean? So maybe introduce us to what it is that you've come up with, and how people can get behind your products.
So we have several tools that we use. One of our most popular, it is as popular with the students as it is with the parents, surprisingly, is this very small sensor. So we have a water sensor, right? Plug it to a few batteries. 2 would work very, very well. And we usually use rechargeable batteries because we have a very small solar panel, about the size of your palm here. Very small solar panel. It charges rechargeable batteries, and it is connected to a single sensor that is a water sensor. So we play around with it. We ask students, okay, we have this sensor. It works. It alarms us whenever it gets into contact with water, etc., etc. How can we use this sensor in our everyday lives? And we came to the conclusion, mostly, if you've been to Zimbabwe recently, of course, there's water crisis. And most people have water tanks, those green big water tanks, right? So some of the problems that they face is adding water into the water tank. Sometimes you don't know how much water you have, how much water you have left. Is it full? Is it leaking? What's going on? So with that sensor, we can actually sense where the water levels in the tank is, right? So we can literally put that water sensor on the tank, and it will beep if it gets to a point where it touches the water levels, right? And we have students do that at school, use simple water bottles, and the water sensor beeps. The tool works perfectly well. They take it home, they try it out on a big water tank, and voila, it works, right? In real life. Parents are like, oh, this pretty interesting, Now we don't have to worry about thinking about, do we still have enough water in the tank? Do we have to pump some more water, call the company that comes in, fills the water tank? Where are we, right? So these are some of the solutions that we have. We have several that can be used in real life. So that is the goal, right? Our tools, we create them based on the problems that people actually face. So that is one of our most popular one, but we can go deeper into several ones. I'll gladly do so.
Absolutely. I mean, what you just reflected here is the best products aren't usually the smartest. They're the ones that actually really do the job. You know what I mean? Like, it is crucial for people to know, do we still have water or not? Because that goes past education. That's like a whole startup in and of its own. That's like marketing. That's life. You know what I mean? Like every single time that, yeah, understandable. Wow. So for those that are watching right now, I want you to just check in with yourself. Where are you in your life? Maybe overcomplicating something that actually just needs a simple solution, because from what Blessing is saying, it does, all this complexity that we're putting ourselves into, maybe we need all of it, and things of that nature. So now that, you've gotten us into your world, Blessing, tell us, what's next? Where can people maybe rally around what you're doing, and how can maybe people support your cause, see other experiments, or maybe just get in touch with you and find out how maybe you could help their school or their community or the country?
Oh, yeah, sure. So currently we are on all social media platforms, Facebook, LinkedIn, mainly. LinkedIn, we do communicate with schools and school admins and government institutions. Facebook as well. On both platforms, we are ZivoLabs. We also have a website, ZivoLabs.com, that people can reach us on. We can be reached on WhatsApp as well. I think we will add the contact information. You can find the contact information on our pages as well, on Facebook, LinkedIn, and on our website. But generally, in terms of support, I think it's not necessarily about us. But if anyone wants to support, you can just support any organization in Zimbabwe that is pushing STEM and technology to schools and students. We have quite a few that are going around. Some of them I really, really admire the work that they are doing. So it looks very bright, in my opinion. It looks very, very, very good.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, now I will make sure that all those links are in the show notes so that people can go ahead and check out some of the projects and work that you're doing, and actually, get behind you guys and things of that nature. But, obviously, we've come full circle. I mean, you're that kid that was playing around with wire cars, and now you're helping other kids, sort of create for themselves, and utilize the resources that they have in a sort of minimalistic way. What's next? What can we expect from you, Blessing?
We expect to keep pushing in that same direction, trying to reach as many schools and as many students as we possibly can. Get into the view of most decision makers, be it government officials and so forth. That is the main goal at the very moment, but also just to keep improving our tools and our kits, get into more high-end technologies that students have to know in this digital world, in this digital era, and just keep improving our offerings to schools and students.
Absolutely. I intentionally, obviously, did not talk a lot more about your products, because just in case some are different, some are going to be changing in the future. But I encourage people to go check those out in your social media so that people can actually jump on there. Now, Blessing, I mean, your life story and your experience have so much value to a lot of people. And not only would it have been new, but I think you gave language to the work that, or the way of life that we all were brought up, and now you just literally bringing it back. Yes, it could be a piece of tech here and there, but you're also just trying to bring back that nostalgia that you left with as that Warren Park boy, which makes me viscerally believe that we're here to live, to learn, and to contribute. You've lived the life that you sort of missed, and you've gone on and learned what needs to be done in order for you to then come back and contribute, so that other kids are not going to just get lost and not find themselves in this new technology. So on behalf of the people that are going to experience your technology and the future that you're inventing and creating, thank you, Ra. Thank you so much for spending time with me on the call today.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. Great platform here. I hope you keep pushing and keep bringing the word to the world.
Well, it was those wire cars that keep us bending and trying to patch things, even if it's the internet or whatever it is, you know what I mean? So thank you so much. Now, for those that are watching right now, this episode wasn't about Zimbabwe. I think it was about a universal shift. And if you're involved in any building or any technology, try to stop building for impressiveness, but start building for usefulness. And stop chasing perfect conditions and just start mastering real ones. Go into the grassroots, find out what people really need, and go and create for that, because everybody's now just chasing the whole new AI or whatever it is. And yet there's so much that can be done using yesterday's technology, which is still very functional and which is still very useful. And in the process, you're also helping others be, do, and have a happier existence. So Blessings Jenny just shows us that meaningful impact doesn't come from better tools. It actually just comes from a better understanding of human reality. So if this conversation made you rethink about how to learn, teach, or build, or maybe solve problems, I encourage you, first of all, subscribe to the Online Prosperity Show, because you don't want to miss out on conversations like this. But share this episode with somebody who's in education, in tech, or in leadership, or maybe send this to the president of Zimbabwe, because, hey, there are other people out there that are actually creating useful solutions that could actually make it easier for them to literally be, do, and have a happier existence. Now, check out ZivoLabs. And if you care about practical, hands-on STEM solutions that actually work, that will be the place to go. I don't know what you're going to do with this information today. Bye for now.